It's time to bring you yet another amazing episode. And now, welcome your host.
This is The Backstory with Omobola Stephen. It's a balanced, objective, unbiased and disruptive conversation on government and politics. We shine more light on what has not worked and what would make it work. And
good to have you on The Backstory. My name is Omobola Stephen, the host of The Backstory. Now, one of the major issues that is facing the world today, they include climate change, human rights violation. We talk of lack of access to healthcare and education. Insecurity issues, we also talk about corruption, environmental degradation, poverty, and the likes. Now, in spite of all the debates, discussions, and counter debates here and there, it seems these challenges of this time seem not to be abating now. Which way to go and what are we doing wrong? What can we do right now? These are some of the important questions on the mind of the audience of The Backstory with Omobola Stephen. On the show, we focus on what has not worked and what we make it work with professionals in the industry, disruptors whose mission is to offer the insight that will pivot the positive changes the world needs. Now, the podcast make his set. My name is Omobola Stephen once again. Welcome to The Backstory with Omobola Stephen, where we focus on government and politics, topics with other subtopics like science and technology, society and culture, the environment, the economy. Thank you, Jeff Lee, for joining me on the show. Now, Jeff Lee is the managing principal at 100 Mile Strategy. That's a consultancy that helps organizations and companies partner with government. Good to have you on the show, Jeff Lee.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Great to have you. I'm looking forward to a great time. And we will be talking about the emerging technology and the Trump administration. President Trump's move to modernize U.S. technology policies, such a great topic for discussion at such a time as this. Now, the question on the mind of the audience is how the administration of President Trump is going to reshape the most disruptive sector, which is the technology.
Sure. I mean, the United States has been a global leader on emerging technology. And obviously, you can't have a conversation about technology without the discussion about artificial intelligence and AI. That debate has been reinforced and reinvigorated here in Washington, especially as it relates to the United States' global leadership role versus in a growing and more adversarial China. And so Washington policymakers, even before Trump's arrival to the White House a second time, has represented growing bipartisan concerns about Chinese access to emerging technologies and being a global leader in that space, challenging America's role as the world superpower. So, you know, the Trump administration came in really looking at artificial intelligence as, number one, a national security imperative, to be able to say that the United States needed to, quote unquote, win the race on AI before the Chinese do. And so the administration has been aggressive about pushing for deregulation in the space, providing incentives to encourage companies. And it's at a time where rules, especially on safety and security, are not done. They are only just starting here in Washington. So that is a really interesting opportunity for decision makers, policymakers, and companies and organizations who are deploying AI tools to figure out something that works for them. That's on the one end. So national security, big question. The second question is about the economics and the cost. I mean, it's billions and billions of dollars that, you know, OpenAI, Anthropic, other companies have dumped into ensuring that artificial intelligence is at a place that it's usable to scale and has clear use cases that will reshape the way we work as a society. That amount of economic investment doesn't just happen. You know, that's billions and billions of dollars they've had to raise, and now they need to be able to show the ROI on that amount of money. And so, you know, these companies have been pushing Washington to take a more hands-off approach as these companies are trying to engage in the business. More interesting at a time where the European Union and other global governments are taking a more hesitant and regulatory approach to rules, standards, privacy, consumer protection. So this is a very interesting path where you have the Americans pushing aggressively to try to champion their biggest companies, right? I mean, in California alone, 32 of the 50 largest AI companies in the world are in California. So there's a huge economic imperative, right? Think about for revenue and tax and opportunity, employment, big thing. And at the same time, you have the Europeans who are trying to think about the consumer and the user. And that's understandable since we still don't really know what could happen. And then you have the Chinese on the other end who don't have the same restrictions, right? They have their own way of doing things. And there's not local permitting that you need to build a data center, right? There's no, there's no areas for debates in some of these discussions versus in Washington, where you have not just policymakers here having to debate, interest groups having the discussion, consumer groups trying to influence, but you also have US states that are trying to operate and have their own interest to why they want regulation for the space and economic incentives for companies to go to their state. So you have all of these things happening right now at a really important time. And the Trump administration is now trying to balance all of these competing interests.
Now let's look at President Trump's rescission of Biden's AI executive order and the adoption of an executive order on removing barriers to American leadership in AI. So how do you think on how can such system be free from ideological bias and social agendas?
Yeah, so the one thing the Trump administration hates is anything that came from the Biden administration. I think consistently, when you look at their initiatives in the first now over 100 days of the administration, they have tried to do the opposite of what the Biden administration did. The Biden administration on artificial intelligence really tried a strategy of study, research, and surveying people for expert insight. That's really the approach they tried, and recognizing that they are worried about a more aggressive China in the technological space. The Trump administration has said, forget that. We are going to be all aggressive, all accelerator, no brakes on trying to have economic advantage versus the Chinese. But we're also going to ensure or find ways to restrict the Chinese access to semiconductors, right? So the chips that actually power artificial intelligence, which allows you to have the benefits, right? It's really three things. You need the chips to power the thing. You need the data centers to do the processing, and then you need the brain power to actually do it. So the data scientists to actually do the thing. Those three currencies are very hard to come by, and so the United States has tried to restrict that. The challenge is the Chinese have been able to do some of these efforts without necessarily the best chips. That's very interesting, and that's changed the way the model for how much it costs to do these things could be. To your question about bias, the administration has solicited comments for their upcoming AI action plan, and it's pretty bipartisan that people want the large language models to be just very by the books, that they wouldn't have an implicit bias in there. And that is fundamental because you need the actual deliverable to be correct. So anything that moves away from that makes the use case different. And so I think both the Democrats and Republicans recognize that.
I believe also President Trump also revoked the Biden's administration digital assets executive order. He went ahead to issue a separate executive order on bolstering the U.S. in digital financial technology. So the question is, how do you think this measure can guard against the risk that this assets pose?
Yeah, that's a great question. In Washington, there's been growing interest to regulate stablecoins and cryptocurrencies, blockchain-enabled technology. There's been growing interest from Democrats and Republicans to do this. I would have told you last week even that policymakers were moving towards a framework to allow for cryptocurrencies to be connected to actual things of value with a different regulatory framework. But right now, there's a debate in Washington, and it's unclear what will happen. So, the president in his re-election bid for a second term courted the cryptocurrency community. And so they've been very bullish on him. And so even if he pushes an executive order to advocate for digital assets, you still need Congress to enact these things. And so that partnership is still going to take time. I still think they're going to get to some sort of regulation or some sort of agreement. It's just not as it will just not be as drama free.
But really, how can we strengthen? Excuse me, please. How can we strengthen Americans' leadership in this digital financial technology?
Well, I think the conversation in Washington has already helped this. It's, I think, acknowledging where opportunities and challenges are, that you need to have some sort of legal guidance and rules so that people can adhere to them. I think you have seen, even in the last few months, major thefts of exchanges from what looks like North Korean hackers. So there's a recognition that the consumers need some degree of protection. There needs to be some rules of the road. And I think the banks and financial system is open to, the partnership. So I think that is something that's moving along. I think it's not a question of if, but when. And I think the big question is going to be who is most advantaged and benefited from this? Can it be done in a way where everyone benefits? That's the big question going forward.
All right, moving ahead. So in terms of the stakeholders in the industry, what do you think that these policies offer for the stakeholders in the industry as they begin to consider next steps, whether to revoke, expand, or retain tech policies that is initiated under President Biden?
You're already seeing the Trump administration do very different things versus the Biden administration. So they've already turned the chapter on that, with the one exception of restraining Chinese access to key semiconductor chips. That's the big question right now. How much restraints will you see going forward here? But again, from a national security imperative and an economic one, there is bipartisan support to continue championing American headquartered AI companies and trying to protect them against more aggressive efforts from the Chinese, especially as it relates to intellectual property theft and misusing patented materials that clearly are coming from American innovation. That's the big thing they're trying to restrict. The challenge with that is we're in a digital world. So there's no boundaries here in that space. And especially from a cybersecurity perspective, if a really strong state-sponsored actor wants to get something, they will. And so I think the question is not how do we continue to restrict? It's going to be what do we do when they have everything? Then what? And that is a big question. I think that's going to be coming in the next 4 years.
All right, good to know. Thank you, Jeff, for sharing that insight with the audience. So how do you think the US can remain a global leader in technology? Now, in terms of building and maintaining trust in AI, quantum information, science, and nuclear energy?
Well, I think a couple things. So first off, you highlighted nuclear. I think there is growing interest to have sort of an all of the above energy strategy that includes, natural gas and other areas, but also realizing that to power the innovation economy, you need more energy, especially energy that is created domestically, and that includes in renewables. I think there's recognition on that, and so I think that's going to be an important feature there. And forgive me here. What else? What other parts of this are you also referring to in terms of innovation?
Yes, I also refer to the quantum information science.
Okay, quantum. Okay, well, on the quantum side, I mean, the advantage the United States has is, they have world-class research and development. And I think the continued areas of investment that the government has made in the past and quantum, but also in standards is really important. I mean, the Department of Commerce here, especially in cybersecurity and emerging technology, has world-leading indicators, metrics, research that other countries around the world cite and use. So they're the ones really at the forefront of understanding risk and opportunity and providing thoughtful insight for other countries and other governments to think about and consider. That leadership position I don't see changing. The challenge is going to be whether this administration continues the strong public investments in science and technology and research development. You're seeing disinvestments right now, or at least proposed disinvestments at the university level. And I don't know if you've seen recent news, but the European Union and France has been pushing to try to court American-based scientists and researchers to come to Europe to do their research there, and providing healthy sums of money at a time where certain U.S. government organizations are having to cut, or they've decided to not issue their grants to researchers. That's probably not the most ideal timing to do that at a time where, again, we talked about earlier, human capital is one of the most important things to the AI innovations and race going forward.
Donald Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, that is the DOGE, which was charged to modernize federal technology and software to increase efficiency and productivity. Now, what is going on in the minds of the audience is that this is a very laudable step. But the question is, can DOGE have the expertise to decide which federal government operations should be cut?
Yeah. So first off, what DOGE has been doing has been trying to reduce some fraud, waste, and abuse. I think if they were more focused on recommendations that had already been made by inspector generals in these agencies and departments, that might have been a better use of their time. At the end of the day, they still need Congress to approve of the cuts. So because this is money that has already gone to them. Now, the administration has a lot of latitude in what they do based on their powers within the government, but you still need Congress to agree to the cuts. And that is not entirely clear what will that look like. Expertise that comes from these folks, I think there probably would have been better ways to do that. Again, what was the goal here? Is the goal to seek and reduce fraud? There's probably other ways to do that. I think while it's too early to tell what the impact of this will be, firing people that are trying to do public good, especially young people. So these are folks who just entered the government in less than a year, and having them fired. It is so hard to hire people for the government. It takes so many months. So to lose all those people is a huge loss of talent. And then the senior people who are now deciding to retire, you can't just find that expertise overnight. So I think there is going to be a generational loss for public service, and I think that's at an unfortunate time where issues in the United States are only getting tougher.
But really, how can we close the gap?
In terms of human capital, I mean, one of the things they probably should have done, but they didn't do, and maybe this is something that will have more traction in the future, is to reform the way the government hires people. There has been growing interest to have more flexibility to fire people, but I think there needs to be more effort on how to quickly hire people and then give them roles that best fit the need of the mission. That's probably true. And again, the government has grown over time. But I think the question here is, how do we get people with these new expertises to come in and modernize the government? You can't really do that unless you have people there. No amount of AI tools, even the best AI tools, still require people. And, AI tools can help with some things. It will help in terms of improve the speed to deliver. But you still need people to have the strategy and the mission and to fulfill the law. That's still a human part. And so unfortunately, we still need more people to enter government service, not less.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Having you on the show and share your insight on this important topic. Do you have any exciting news, perhaps a project you think is going to add value to the audience? You can share if you have any.
Sure. I just had a piece that came out last week on cybersecurity in the U.S. maritime space, and there's been such focus by the Trump administration on the southern Mexico border that they haven't necessarily been thinking about the oceans. And when I worked in government for the governor of California, I had so many challenges in securing like ports and other water, especially when it led to illegal drug trafficking and trade. So I had a piece that came out, which I want to make sure I share with your audience, that highlights opportunities for the administration to better secure the waters of the United States, especially from cybersecurity attacks, which has grown exponentially. And it's an area that has been underappreciated and deserves more of attention.
Right, good to know. Excuse me, good to know. Thanks for sharing that information with the audience. Do you like to share your website or your social media handles? Well, that's optional, but feel free to do
Yes,
that if you have any.
absolutely. You can follow me at 100milestrategies.com. We'll make sure to send the link in the show notes here. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you for this really timely and important conversation.
Thank you so much, Jeff Lee, for your time and for offering a valuable contribution to the topic of discussion, especially on emerging technology and the Trump administration. We had a word right and listened to your expertise on today's topic. We sincerely wish you best of luck in all of the projects you embark upon, Jeff Lee. Now, if you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of The Backstory, we can do so on any podcast distribution platforms or any podcast promotion platforms to bump in online. And you have a great time. Listen to Mindshift conversations on government and politics topics, and also subtopics like science and technology, society and culture, the environment, and also the economy. Well, we will appreciate you giving a 5-star review and also a rating when you come across the Backstory with Omobola Stephen on any podcast distribution platforms to bump into. Do have a great time, and thank you once again, Jeff Lee, for your time.
Pleasure to have you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review.